Hey guys, it's Generalkidd here. How's everyone doing today? So, for today's video, we're showing you guys some glitches, secrets, and Easter eggs on the new Season 3 maps in Halo Infinite. So, let's get right into it and start with the map Chasm. So, before we get into this, I want to give a big shout out to Bubba, who actually showed me a lot of these interesting things on the map Chasm. And there are a lot of things on this map, which is why we're starting with this map. Alright, so, one thing about Halo Infinite is that you can ping locations around the map. You can ping the call-out locations, the ones that show up in the bottom left corner of your screen next to your motion tracker. So on this map, there are a few interesting locations that you could ping. And I spawned a platform here in Forge underneath the playable area of the map, because this platform marks where you can actually ping the first location, which is called Yeehaw. And this is just a little bit below the playable area, and I assume it's for when if you use your grapple shot to swing across the bottom of the map. And you'll see that call-out location on your motion tracker. But if you fail your swinging around the map and you fall down, then down there where I placed a couple platforms, you'll see the other call-out called Oh No. And that's presumably for when you fall underneath the map, it'll pop up very quickly. There's also two other interesting call-out locations, and it's on these floating platforms out here, or these floating pillars. The first one is called Toothpick. And on the other side of the map, because it's a symmetrical map, at least for this area, you can ping the other one, and you'll get the ping Clegg. And I don't know what that means, but that's the other one. So, aside from callouts, outside the map, there are also a couple of leftover objects from Campaign, because this whole map is basically reused from Campaign with a few modifications to make it work for multiplayer. So, behind the wall here on the Cobalt side of the map, there is a random hexagonal pillar, and, well, I don't know what it was originally used for, but it's floating out here, and it's only on the Cobalt side. Even though the map is symmetrical, it is not on the gold side of the map. There's also this Forerunner crate, I guess, that's out here, and it's outside the map. You can't see it or reach it inside the map at all. It's just there. And it's on both sides of the map as well, but only the Cobalt side also has the hexagonal pillar. Now, we're just going to fast forward to this next part, because outside the playable area, there are a lot of leftover areas from Campaign. All of these platforms were used in the Campaign mission, and all these corridors and doors, they are all from Campaign. Entire sections of Campaign are pretty much left out here. There's even like leftover assets from Campaign, like these door lights, if I recall. And these can all be found outside the map. And underneath the map, there's also more platforms down here. And if you go even lower, at the bottom of the map, it's actually an entire playable area where you won't die down here. So there's a lot that could be done on this map. This map is actually really huge. There's so many like unused playable areas. And above the ceiling, like at the ceiling level, there's also this invisible floor up here that also has a playable area. And if we go even further up, we can go on top of the roof of this entire structure. And it's really dark up here, but you can kind of make it out. But there is, the whole roof has an entire playable area. And I don't know if this was ever used in Campaign or not, because there's a lot of missing stuff. But I did light up the end section here, but it's pretty much the same throughout the entire roof. It's, you know, this whole floor up here with some doorways. And I don't think it was ever used in Campaign, but it exists up here. And yeah, there's actually a huge playable space up here too. Now, because I lit it up near the edge of the map, you probably assume that the map skybox is just, well, a black skybox, and that's it. But you can actually see that we are actually within a box, like a literal box, not a skybox. Now, we'll revisit this box later, but it does have these default placeholder textures on it. And like I said, we'll cover that in a little bit, so keep that in mind. But the next thing is outside of the map, like past the barriers of the map. We actually haven't even crossed the barriers yet when we were on the roof. But past the barriers of the map, you can see the whole map down there, where we are in relation to the map. But up here, outside the map, there is a floating, well, random object up here that has a checkerboard texture on it. It is not an actual checkerboard, or chessboard for that matter. It does not have the proper amount of squares, but it does look like it because it's a placeholder texture. But it's just floating up here. It's solid, and it's a playable area as well. So that is another thing that's hidden outside the map. But now, let's revisit the edge of the map. Like I said, we are inside a box, and if we light up the edges of the map, like the edges of the box, you can see that there's two different kinds of placeholder textures used. One that's orange and one that's, default checkerboard pattern. But if we go outside of the map, which is actually kind of difficult to spawn stuff in Forge out here, but outside the map, we can see there actually is a sun on this map. And we can't see it from in the map because the entire map is enclosed within this box. But now that we're outside of the box, the playable area is even huger out here, like even larger. So, like if this were Halo 3, getting out of the map and finding like a huge playable area like this, it would make for like a really great, playable space. But since Halo 5 introduced like the empty canvas maps for Forge, it doesn't really matter anymore. But yeah, it's just really cool that there's this whole like area outside the map, and this is probably there in campaign as well. The next thing that's not unique to this map, but it seems like if you use a teleporter to teleport huge distances in Halo Infinite, your weapon charm just like freaks out. Almost like it's kind of trying to catch up from the outside of the map all the way in. The last thing is these platforms left over from campaign. If you fly inside of them, there's these error textures or these placeholder textures within the platform. You won't see them from the outside, but they're there on the inside. So just a little fun hidden thing there. So that's pretty much all the major stuff for Chasm. Let's move on to the map Cliffhanger. This is the other new map for Halo Infinite, and this one is not from campaign. So there are a couple doors on this map, and if we go through these doors, they all lead to this hidden cave system, and it's also a playable space within this cave system. There's like a walkable floor here, and I placed these lights aren't here. It's actually really dark in here, so I placed these lights to light it up, but we can see the cave system better. There's actually a death barrier at the bottom of this cave system, so I didn't jump all the way down. But you can see it's a pretty big cave network, and there's a few playable spaces within here as well. So that's basically it for secret areas. The other thing is, I guess, this little elevator shaft that leads to pretty much nowhere, it seems. I'm just going to fly as close as possible, but there's a death barrier down here, and I couldn't really get any lower. But you can kind of see what's at the bottom of the elevator shaft, which is not much, but I just wanted to put it out there. Another interesting thing is that if you play Escalation Slayer on this map, and I mean like the narrative event specific version of Escalation Slayer, because I believe there's separate versions, the entire map will be covered in like this kind of corruption that's going around the map, which I believe is like a live event tied to the narrative event. So it's pretty cool to see that there if you haven't noticed it before. And the last thing on this map is that, at least in matchmaking, it doesn't really happen in custom games or Forge for me, but at least in matchmaking, the birds on this map are broken. As in, they don't fly anymore. They'll spawn on the map and just flap their wings, but they don't seem to do anything. And you just push them around, and it's pretty much all the birds on this map. So if you go to all their spawn locations, normally they fly away in like solo, custom game, or Forge, but in matchmaking, they just don't function correctly, and they're just there in place. You can still interact with them, like push them around or kill them, but that's about it. So it's a little glitch on this map. I don't know if it happens on any other map, but it definitely happens on Cliffhanger. And for the last map of Season 3 is the BTB map Oasis. This map, well, it's one of the most beautiful maps in all of Halo, I would say. But this map also has a couple of locked doors, and behind them are also some small playable areas outside the map, although this one is not as detailed or even as interesting as the previous maps. I would say Chasm has like the craziest and most interesting playable areas of the map. Like, you could do some crazy stuff on that map. But like I said, because Halo Infinite has like these Forge canvases, you don't really need to do like, finding playable areas outside of the normal map. That's like more of a Halo 3 or Halo Reach thing. Like, you remember all those old Halo 3 maps where people just like had these weird areas outside the map for infection or for like interesting like small game types and stuff. Like, that stuff doesn't really matter anymore these days, but it's still pretty cool to find those playable areas outside of maps. And, now that we can Forge on dev-made maps, you could technically still use them to make some interesting game types, but, you could do that on the Forge canvases anyways, because that's how things have changed nowadays for Forge, and it's not a bad thing. It's just, it just kind of made finding playable areas outside of maps kind of obsolete. But yeah, so those are all the secret areas outside of Oasis, and that's pretty much it for Oasis. As far as I could tell, there wasn't much else that was interesting. But if I missed anything, just let me know in the comments down below. I'm definitely curious what else there is. But aside from that, if you enjoyed this video and found it to be interesting, then as always, make sure to leave a like. And like I said, just let me know your thoughts and comments down below, and if there's anything else I missed that you want to point out. But aside from that, make sure to subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye, guys!